And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Founded in 1955, the Kitsbiox Valley Community Association is a vibrant hub for locals in the Kitsbiox Valley to connect, learn, and engage. In 2014, the KVCAA issued the Kitsbiox Valley Declaration, which states that residents cannot stand by and let any industrial presence, including oil and gas development, that would threaten or harm our values and responsibilities. On today's Open Connection, Graeme shares some community concerns about the Prince Rupert Gas Transmission Project.
So it first dropped onto the radar late in 2012, was the sort of first exploratory work locally for this pipeline corridor. And it caught everybody by surprise then, and we started asking questions, and nobody in government had answers. It's like industry had been turned loose on the land, and they were cutting trees, and one ministry of the government was pointing to the other for answers, and nobody had them. So we started to advocate for this place back then. And then, as you may know, the Prince Rupert Gas Transmission Project, PRGT, became kind of an orphan project when the LNG plant it was supposed to connect to on Lilo Island was basically abandoned by its promoters. So, and eventually that sort of morphed into LNG Canada at Kitimat. Some of the players went that way. So then you have this pipeline route that was approved, had its environmental assessment certificate, but didn't have a place to hook up to, basically. So it kind of lay dormant for a very long time. It never really totally went off my radar, but it kind of went off everybody's, for the most part, a lot of people's radar. And then suddenly it's back with a vengeance, and it's happening very quickly. And I think that's the surprise this time for the local population, is that it's not just like a concept now, it's like they're built it.
I look on a map and I see this little line going through. Why is there such a concern about this line kind of going through the territory?
The line, yes, the right-of-way is about 100 meters wide, 50 meters wide. But every road that would cross, so every Forest Service road, every access road that would cross that line to reach the line, say for industry to deliver pipe to and equipment, would be closed to public access. So if you've got a road like, say, the Polk Forest Service Road in the Kitsbiox Valley here, the pipeline would cross that road at about kilometer 4.5, 5. They're going to put a work camp at kilometer 3. So if you go berry picking, firewood gathering, hunting up to Pope Road, you can't do that anymore. So and that's just one of many, many, many roads right across the province, not just here, that would be closed to public access. So you take that 100-meter strip and add maybe 7, 8, 9 kilometers on either side of it. That's a big chunk of BC that's now off limits. Very big chunk. And government is not telling you this. Industry is not telling you this. They will just invade and shut it down. And we've seen it with Coastal GasLink. We've seen it with Trans Mountain. This is what's coming.
Work camps, I guess, need to be set up along this was that 900-kilometer route. Is that correct?
So the work camps are one of the major threats to the local way of life. And I do use the word threat intentionally. They, despite what industry will say about how they attempt to control access to and from, when work camps come, they bring a whole range of social economic ills to a community, and a lot of impact to infrastructure. So if you have 1,100, so the population of the Hazeltons area where so if you include outlying communities, including where I live, 2,800 people, you're gonna put a work camp of 1,100 people into that populace. How does 911, how does the hospital, how does that get serviced? Because it's going to put almost another 50% demand, probably more, because work camps generate a lot of medical attention. How's a community going to service that? And it's not just here, it's all along the route, right? That the infrastructure is going to get pounded. And the infrastructure, we already have a hospital that gets closed often in the evenings. How's the community going to be serviced by what it pays its taxes to when this industry invades and puts more stress on that infrastructure? And the work camps bring, and I'm not making it up, you look at even the studies for this own pipeline and for the LNG plant that it would connect to, they bring lots of ills, the drug trade, the sex trade. Women are not safe in communities where there are work camps nearby. And that's not just here, that's been studied in the US. It's been studied in a lot of places. It's clear evidence that there's great harm comes from having these in your community. And I think it's fine for people to push back and say no. I really do.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. Large-scale projects can significantly impact communities, leading to both positive and negative consequences across economic, social, cultural, and environmental spheres. These impacts are not solely imposed on communities. The way a community responds to and manages the project significantly affects the outcome. Let us return to the conversation with Graeme.
Where we are here, if you're in a grave way, on a good day, to get a patient to Vancouver from walking in the door, say at the Hazelton Hospital, is 8 hours to get them to the trauma center or the surgical center. And if you're like 2 hours out in the bush from that hospital, when that happens, you're maybe looking at next day before they get to the point of care. So I think any practitioner in the field seeing that kind of urgency, they're going to do what they can do in-house, but they're going to trigger the 911 system, ask for a helicopter, ask for a fixed-wing plane, whatever it is. And so these people, you're going to add almost 50% to the local population. And that's just the people in the camps. There will be people working here on this pipeline who are just in the camp. They'll be in local accommodation. There'll be a demand on the infrastructure that cannot be met because 911 calls at the moment cannot be met. If there's a problem all across BC with that. So I would say from my experience, and I'm not working in ambulance anymore, but I saw it in the time that I was, that we couldn't meet the demand. And I think that's going to be more true when you focus this kind of industry in this area.
And I guess getting back to the actual pipeline itself, I mean, is this going to be above ground, below ground, a mixture of two, or? It
will be mostly below ground. Some of the river crossings will sort of be kind of on pylons above the river. Some will just be straight through the river, as we saw in Coastal GasLink, and some will be tunneled under the major rivers. But most of it will be buried in the ground. And then what happens, of course, the pipeline company and our government will say, well, you just won't even know it's there. You will know it's there because they apply herbicide for the duration of the project to keep vegetation down. So it brings that pollutant into the environment. And the other reason you'll know it's there locally here is because there'll be a compressor station nearby. And as bad as pipeline construction is, it's the compressor station, which is the long-term evil in this project for what it would pump into the atmosphere. Basically, a couple of jet engine turbines powered by natural gas from the pipeline to push natural gas through the pipeline. So just think of a couple of natural gas-fired, frac gas-fired turbines running eternally for 40 years on the bank of the Skeena River north of Kispiox Village, about 7 kilometers from where I live. And the Skeena River is not called the River of Mists for no reason. And so it will make condensing methane smog a lot of the time, which will drift down valley and poison basically the area.
Now, these compression stations you're talking about, will these be manned 24/7 or? They will be built with bunkhouses, so they may have people on site, but from what I've read, they do a lot of remote monitoring of them.
The other thing that a compressor station brings into the mix is every once in a while they shut down lengths of the pipeline to check the integrity of the pipe. And they do what's called a blowdown. They just vent the gas into the atmosphere. So pure methane, the volume of which you can't get a number from industry, will be vented. And along with being noisy, it's just, this is the greenhouse gas. This is the driver of climate change. Far more potent than carbon dioxide. It leaks everywhere through the pipeline industry process. And then it's intentionally flared, like at Kitimat, what's happening now. And it's intentionally vented as part of pipeline operations. So that will be in the mix as well. And it's just sad that our government would think this is okay.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Divide and conquer as a political and/or military tactic's core idea is to exploit divisions within a group or enemy forces, preventing them from uniting against a common adversary. By creating or exacerbating existing divisions, a stronger identity can maintain or gain control. Let us return to the conversation as Graeme shares some impacts facing the Kits-Be-Aux Valley community.
There is a lot of opposition, both on principle of why are we building another mega fossil fuel project, and on the principle of not wanting the disruption of our homes and our ways of life. And there's a lot of it's hard to find the word, but there's a real schism amongst First Nations about this, and again, I think it's being intentionally played by government and industry to make a lot of disharmony among people and to actually break them so they don't have the resolve to oppose something which is a threat to traditional way of life. It's a threat. This pipeline is an immense threat to salmon, for instance, just immense with the damage that will be done to stream crossings. And they're going to build the LNG plant in the Nass estuary, which the Nass and the Skeena are two of the last. They're not super healthy, but they're healthier than many salmon ecosystems in the world. And our government is going to allow those ecosystems to be harmed and put salmon at greater risk than they are. And you take salmon away from traditional culture in this area. That's just, to even think of the risk of that is, I think it's appalling. And so the resistance, a lot of people are feeling that threat and they want to resist because of that. So there is a lot of sort of quiet resistance, and a lot of people feeling like they haven't been heard. If you go through the submissions for both of these projects, PRGT and SLISMs, the public comments, you'll find something on the order of 85% of comments are opposed to the project. The ones that are for the project are basically, you could summarize them and say, yeah, let's build it, let's get on with it. And that's the comment, right? And other people have put in pages and pages, and some are quasi-scientific submissions, dismantling the rationale for these projects. And nobody listens. It's just like, oh yeah, thanks for your submission. On we go. So people are feeling a lot of frustration with the process. The process is utterly broken. We participated in it hoping that we would sway something, and we haven't. So what does that leave the people who are concerned with not only with where they live, but with the planet? Where does that leave people? So that's kind of the frustration that we're hearing. And we've seen it since we've been here, in the time we've been here, the number of sort of smoke inversions. And it used to be, when you get those nice crisp winter days, kind of like on the third or fourth day, you start to see it settling in. It gets worse in Smithers, and then kind of travels down the Bulkley Valley towards Saskatoon. Now it's on the first day you see it as something has changed. So the way this pipeline would exacerbate that is, so pretty much all the timber that would be cut, all the trees that would be cut along the pipeline route will be slash burned in place. They will not be shipped out as logs to be processed. even though there are local sawmills who could probably take them. So you'll have slash burning that will add to it. And then, as I mentioned, and the equipment operations, of course, to build the pipeline will generate emissions, diesel emissions. And then you'll have the compressor station, which will generate tremendous amount of emissions. So yeah, in the building and then in the operation, this pipeline will make air quality worse. And we're downwind from LNG Canada. So that's in the mix now too, and Rio Tinto. So, you can't look at these things individually. You have to look at all of them. So adding another emitting industry of this scale into the mix is only going to make things worse, even though the studies say, yes, things are bad with this particular component of the emissions mix, but in and of itself, it's fine. But they never put all of them together. When they say they look at the cumulative effects of, say, Rio Tinto, LNG Canada, slash burning from forestry, PRGT, SILISMs, and they put them on, they don't. They really don't put them all together, because if they were putting all those, just the air quality emissions together, and they'd say, hey, no, we can't do this because we're not going to meet our legislated greenhouse gas targets for BC if we add one more thing into this mix.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Last month, the British Columbia Environmental Assessment Office determined the Prince Rupert gas transmission pipeline had significantly started fulfilling a requirement of the 2014 certificate and allowing the project to proceed without a new assessment. In this final segment of Open Connection, Graeme shares the BC government's response to the Kitzbühel Valley Community Association.
So the Kitzbühel Valley Community Center Association has made multiple submissions in both the original iteration of this pipeline in 2014 and with the new iteration and with the SILISM's LNG plant, to Premier Eby, to our then MLA, to Minister Davison, in the new government, the Environment Minister, and we have not had replies. We don't get replies. And this is another thing that's really broken with the process. And I understand on the government side of it, if you get 600 submissions on a project, are you going to issue an individual reply to each of them? You should. You write the King of England, you get a reply from somebody in his staff, right? So this is the way it should go. But government just sort of goes, oh, well, we'll just issue a blanket letter when we approve the project saying, yeah, we heard about greenhouse gas emissions, but we think it's going to be okay. We heard about risks to salmon, but I think we can mitigate that away. And that's kind of how the process works now. And people are getting fed up with that, because I myself have invested probably thousands of hours into submissions over the last 10, 12 years. And to not get a reply when you're making an intelligent response to what's being pitched at you, I think that's rude of government. And I think it needs to change. Minister Davidson has been totally silent in replying to specific submissions from this community. There are organizations that are doing the same thing: Skeena Watershed Conservation Coalition, the Northwest Institute out of Smithers. There are, I know, email sort of groups that coordinate around this issue. There's one out of Smithers. I believe there's one out of Terrace. And then if you look at the submissions for SILISMs, you'll actually see a submission from the town of Terrace that opposes it. From the city of Terrace. I think it was the economic development officer in Terrace made a submission saying, hey, we got pounded by LNG Canada. Some money came into the community in terms of, the hotels and services and that kind of stuff, but we spent more maintaining what they needed than we got as a city out of the deal. So if you've got a city saying this wasn't really good for us, then how's it going to be good for a community of 300 people or 400 people or whatever? How's it going to be good for anybody along Highway 16, who now has to deal with the industrial traffic that's going to be involved for another major project. I don't know if you drive that highway much, but used to be you could drive to Smithers and you might see one gasoline tanker truck. Now you see 10 or 12 either way on your drive from Hazelton to Smithers. So the risk, even just on highway traffic alone, for the average person going out, has gone way up. And it doesn't happen much, but when it does happen, it will likely be catastrophic. The economic side of it, like the town council will get the economic benefits pitched to them, and they'll kind of maybe not know how to respond. Oh, that sounds good. But then they get the back end of all the costs that come to them for road maintenance, for bridge maintenance, for their contribution to 911 services, for all that kind of stuff. And then they realize, oh, this actually cost us more than, but you don't find that out till afterwards. When Trans Mountain Pipeline was built through parts of British Columbia, some of the town councils actually billed Trans Mountain for the cost to their infrastructure after the fact. Trans Mountain is owned by the Canadian taxpayer, so we picked that up, right, on the behalf of industry. So it's just like, these are the kind of things that happen. There is, people can't see a way to make meaningful opposition. I know I'm rambling a bit here, but I think that's going to change, because this might be one project too many that people have seen rammed through like this over legitimate concerns.
If you could speak directly to the BC government or to the ministers, what would you tell them?
When you took your position, say as a cabinet minister, you made a promise to that particular office, whether it's environment, climate change, whatever it is, to uphold the best interests of British Columbians. Decisions that are made are supposed to be in the interest of British Columbians, not in the interest of American-owned industries. And with all this rhetoric now about we have to respond to what's going on in the US, we have to build more Canadian stuff, you're going to use American bankers to finance it. So you have been duped by your own decisions into thinking you're standing up for Canada. You are actually buying into the Great Wall Street machine to finance these projects. So I would say have some backbone and say we have something wonderful here in British Columbia. We're not going to give it away to foreign-owned companies, because let's be real, all of this gas is going to be burned in Asia. None of it is for British Columbians. Everything that's going to be built in this pipeline and LNG plant is going to be fabricated in China and Korea and shipped over and assembled like Lego in place. We're not going to use Canadian resources to even build the pipeline. So you've been duped. It's time to wake up, stand up for British Columbia, stand up for Canada, and stand up for the environment. Because the world is burning on your watch.
Thank you for staying with us Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.